Okay, we're going to get started. I'll call the meeting to order. If you could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome to the April 4th, 2019 Town of Riverhead Planning Board meeting. Tonight we have several discussion items and one public hearing. So I think it's only fair that we do the public hearing first. So we're just going to go out of order for the public hearing, which is a public hearing for RGR Ventures minor subdivision, Middle Country Road and Manor Lane in Calverton.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and staff. My name is Thomas Wolpert. I'm an engineer with Young & Young in Riverhead, 400 Ostrander Avenue. I'm here to give a brief presentation on the proposed 4-lot subdivision. Mr. Israel, one of the principals, is here with one of his partners as well. So together, hopefully we can answer any questions that the board may have. The project consists of a 4-lot minor subdivision of a vacant 8.8 acre parcel located on the northeast corner of Manor Road at Middle Country Road. Suffolk County tax map number is District 699, Block 2, Lot 21.2. The property is zoned Industrial A. We are proposing a total of 4 lots, 3 80,000 square foot lots, and 1 141,959 square foot lot, which is approximately 3.3 acres. Subdivision application was initially filed with the Town of Riverhead Planning Board back in July of 2018. Simultaneously, we filed the subdivision application with the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, Office of Wastewater Management, and with respect to the town application, we've had several meetings with the planning board and staff at various work sessions. So I'm sure that the board is very familiar with the project. The health department has made some initial comments, and we are in the process of responding to those comments as well. That is it. If the board has any questions of me, I'm happy to try to answer. If there's something that I can't answer, Mr. Israel is here to help out.
Do you have any clients or tenants lined up yet for the subdivision?
I will defer to Mr. Israel to answer that question.
We do have people that are interested in the lots. Contracts haven't gone out. I won't send out a contract until we have a subdivision or something to sell with meets and bounds, but there is a lot of interest in the parcel and its pieces. Most of it are very docile uses. Okay.
Did you take a look at the access off of Manor Lane? Remember we spoke at the work session about the culvert that the town had dug along the...
I did. I went out to the site. I believe the culvert that he did, and I actually spoke to the farmer to the east, who I guess some of the water comes off of their land, and it always went across to the Lavender Farm, and now that the Lavender Farm has, you know, some development going on it, the water doesn't cross their land anymore. But the culvert that Geo put in basically is around the curve, and I don't even believe it gets to my property. It only, as it comes around that curve, it only goes about another 60, 80 feet. and kind of stops. So the culvert is really there almost as a retainage and doesn't really flow down Manor Road the way that I see it. It's a good 2 to 3 feet deep right off of that roadbed. I think that's how Geo solved the problem, and I guess it perks itself through, you know, and the like.
Okay.
Tom, you mentioned that you had some comments from the health department, and I know we discussed the possibility of having or not having public water brought there. Have they said anything about it?
Go ahead.
Yes, the health department asked for a letter of public water availability, and as they always do, and we did receive a letter of public non-water availability from H2M, the consulting engineers for the Riverhead Water District, and the reasons for what I would call non-availability are, number one, the property is not situated within the current boundaries of the Riverhead Water District. So therefore, in order to serve this property, the applicant would need to petition the town board for not only an extension of the boundaries of the water district, which is subject to approval by the town board, as well as the New York State DEC. And then secondly, would have to pursue a lateral water main extension. And the estimated cost for that, based on the nearest water main, is a minimum of $630,000 and as much as nearly double that. So for 4 lots with docile uses, it doesn't seem practical. But of course, we're working through that process with the health department now.
So then they're gonna ask you to put in a test well?
Yes, they have asked us to put in a test well, and we have done that, and the water meets drinking water standards, so that's not an issue.
Thank you.
Do we have the results? Did you share them with Greg for the test well?
Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions from the board? No. Okay, anyone from the public have any questions or comments on this application? Please come up to the mic and state your name, please, for the record.
Art Binder, Calverton. We have a farm just north of there, walking distance. I'd like to know what the potential buildings would constitute. Are they office buildings? Are they manufacturing buildings? Are they whatever?
We can let Mr. Israel answer that, but the way we're understanding it, there isn't any buildings proposed at this time. It's just a subdivision of property, correct?
Right, we're currently doing a subdivision. It's zoned industrial A, so any of the uses allowed industrial A will happen. And, you know, that's to be seen. But the building sizes currently without public water are limited. They would only be up to, I'll say, I think it's a 13,000 to 14,000 square foot building on each of those lots. So it's not like we're building 150,000 square feet of industrial there at that time.
Any other questions from the public or comments?
Yes, my name is John Yakubowski. My brothers and I, we own the property right next to this property. One concern we would have actually would be the egress, basically. There's about a 5 or 6 difference in topography, basically, from the road to that land. We don't know how that's gonna be resolved on that. Plus, there is significant more traffic continually being brought there, especially when Lavender finally does open up. We're just concerned basically with that aspect of it.
Anyone else from the public? Okay.
Make a motion to close the public hearing of RGR Ventures for a minor subdivision, so moved.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to close the public hearing for RGR Ventures minor subdivision. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed. Thank you. Are we waiting for anybody for the first discussion item? He's not here? Okay. The first discussion item on the agenda is for Enterprise Park at Calverton, EPCAL, an 8-lot preliminary subdivision. Sure, please.
Mr. Rice was not available.
Okay, so we received the revised maps that we had requested from the work session, and I see that the runways are shown on there now, and also the emergency service parcel.
Right, I don't think the boundary of that change has been properly designated, that it's for emergency service as well. It's the Grumman Airplane lot, I call it.
What's labeled now, correct?
So this evening, just maybe to go over, at the last meeting, the board put this on for public hearing in May, and we've met with the health department since that time and told the health department that the CEQA would be concluded hopefully in the near future. And so this evening's resolution is to conclude the CEQA for the modification of the subdivision from the 50-lot plan down to the 8-lot plan. And that's all that's at issue this evening. There'll be a full public hearing and public comment at the meeting in May, the first meeting in May on Thursday.
Okay, some of the questions I brought up at the work session pertain to the new sewer effluent north of the groundwater divide. And I see that Jeff had included that in the analysis plan, correct?
That's right.
So other than noting it in there, where does it go from there?
Well, the sewer extension will be the subject of a town board public hearing. H2M is doing a full report to show that the boundary of the district will be extended to include all of the lots in the subdivision, except for that retained lot for environmental purposes, the Pine Barrens lot on the west end. We're not going to include that in the boundary of the sewer district. So the placing of the sewer district boundary and the taxing jurisdiction will be the subject of a future town board meeting. The plant has been designed in accordance with an accepted facility plan by EFC and DEC, and we've gone out to bid on that. And so that design, and the town currently has a lease of the land to the sewer district, which has been approved by the state. So we're not really making a decision, or I should say your board's not really being asked to make a decision whether that's the appropriate place to put the effluent. It's already been decided in that way. It's just now it's going to be owned by the sewer district instead of leased.
Right, but my question was the direction of the groundwater flow, of what's seeping into the ground there. I know what the DEC had asked for, but what direction is that going? And where is it heading off-site?
It's supposed, well,
Where would it head off-site?
the plant is going to stay where it is, down by the southern entrance, and there'll be a force main up Berman Boulevard, and then it will travel east, go under the runway, and to that lot up in the east corner, which, based on the old, I think it's the 208 study, if I've got my correct nomenclature, the groundwater divide in that 208 study is the southern boundary of that lot, so it would travel north. And that was because the DEC had told the town that the effluent could not go into the headwaters of the Peconic.
Right, and my concern was that now that you're north of the groundwater divide, is it within the capture zone of the public supply wells in the area? And I just wanted some type of report or note by the engineering firm stating that they considered the direction of that flow, because if we don't know the uses, and I understand we're just approving at a map, but the map is asking us to approve this discharge parcel. So that's why, these questions, and it was mentioned in the analysis report also.
I can certainly pose that question directly to H2M in their extension report, which they're drafting now, and have them answer that question for you there. There wasn't any mechanism in the reports that were analyzed by Mr. Seaman to answer that question at this time, but.
It's more of a hydrogeologic question.
Right, and we will certainly put that to the engineer.
Even in the original 50-lot subdivision map, that parcel had been dedicated for this purpose, because it would be north of the groundwater divide for the flow northerly. But if I understand the chairman's concern, was also about any capture of that effluent after it's discharged to groundwater by drinking water wells that are also located north of the parcel.
I have some questions. And I'm dealing with the summary portion of your report, page 11. Just want to get a couple things clarified.
Sure.
On your first paragraph, the last sentence says, secret consistency analysis will be required to evaluate future development. What exactly are you getting at here?
Okay, correct. So the consistency analysis that was performed to evaluate any substantial changes between the 50-lot and the proposed 8-lot subdivision. That used the finding statement that was originally prepared for the FCAL 50-lot subdivision and the zone changes. As no development is being proposed, and there were some hypotheticals done on the 50-lot, and that came to a finding statement that had certain mitigating measures because of the theoretical uses of all 50 lots. On this application, after the subdivision moves forward, any development that is proposed by the developers themselves would have to go through a secret analysis to determine how consistent their proposed uses and potential impacts are with the original supplemental finding statement issued for the 50 and the change of zone. That would be step 1. Step 2 would be depending upon the intensity of their use and proposed uses. If there were any inconsistencies, that would automatically trigger a secret designation. It could be certainly another EIS. It would not be a supplemental to the 50. It would be an independent EIS just to study theirs.
Stand on its own.
Correct. So that gives an added opportunity for those that are reviewing it when an actual development comes forward, because I can't predict what, with all the different uses that are allowed within this zoning use district, what would happen on any of these lots. Now, lots 1 through 5 are still retained by the town. And in the analysis, I identified what previous lots they were. But when you sort of put them all together, the acreages retained by the town actually have increased slightly, not significantly, but by maybe 25 or 30 acres total. And then the other 3 lots are the ones that would be sold and developed at some point, but we don't know for what.
Okay, the next question, or I have, is on the next paragraph. Will you strongly recommend that we require notes to be added on the 8-lot subdivision map? In other words, what each lot is. I think that's what you mean.
I was trying to keep the maps, the 2 maps, as consistent as possible, and I know that the map has continued to advance since the development of my report, because of some of the comments that I've provided, as well as others. But I think that because this map, this 8-lot, is actually a revision to the 50. The process really hasn't stopped. The 50-lot subdivision was last heard by this board in January of 2017, I think, at a public hearing. And no findings statement was ever issued. As an involved agency, you're entitled to your own finding statement. And so since one was not issued, and this is a revision to that map, as many of those notes that are appropriate need to be added to this. And in fact, going back to the chairman's question, I recommended we could put the groundwater divide in. Once H2M has identified that might be helpful in the future. That could certainly be added during subdivision review as well.
Okay, you also, following that sentence, you said a yield map must be prepared. And I don't think we've ever seen one, have we?
Well, we had a lot of discussion about what the yield on these parcels would be. If you look down the list of uses that are allowed within the zoning district, it would be anybody's guess as to what development would be proposed.
And generally, yield maps are for residential anyway.
Pardon?
Generally, yield maps are for residential.
Yes, but we would want to know what yield or density, because it was proposed that one of the parcels might have some restrictions on what development could actually take place there. And if that is restricted, then can that development be moved over to another parcel? So I describe that more as trying to evaluate what could be developed on the parcels and then clustering that in order to create, as you would in any other development in a cluster plan. But since I don't have any nuts and bolts as to what would be constructed, it's hard for me to predict what those impacts would be.
Okay, another one of your recommendations was to have the zoning districts identified for each of the 8 lots
Yes,
on the map.
yes.
All right. I think that's something they could do.
Are
Can be
you
put onto
asking
the map? Yeah.
to identify them on the map? Certainly.
Actually, I'm just following your recommendations to make sure
Okay.
that we
There-
get done. You said, I remember something on lots 6, 7, and 8, that's where the yield is gonna be, hopefully will be taken from 6 and put onto 8, is that right?
That's correct.
I just, if I could there, I don't think that the decision has been made whether the yield would come from that lot. That was something Mr. Eisler addressed, I think, last time regarding the contract, provided that in the event it was impractical to build on that because of the way the bike path
Yep.
severed it. It was never intended to be a separate lot. But the bike path fee ownership was required by Suffolk County as a condition of their grant. So the practical effect of giving the fee ownership to the bike path was to de facto create a separate lot that was never intended. So it may be that they could develop that lot on its own, or they may choose to ask that it be considered in the development of the adjacent lot. There is no current application to any government agency to move any of the density from one lot to the other, but if they did, then certainly what Mr. Seaman's proposing is the only logical way you could do it. You'd have to figure out what it is.
Well,
and-
I think the statement in the summary really said, when those 3 lots are being considered, that secret's gonna have to be done on it.
That's correct.
And, I think somewhere along the line, we've got to include that if we get to the point of doing a resolution.
Regarding a preliminary map. Yes, that makes sense.
What divide you did. Oh, I couldn't find this, there's a sentence in here that uses an abbreviation, CHPP.
Oh, that was the Comprehensive Habitat Protection
Okay, habitat.
Plan.
I knew C was comprehensive, but that was
Oh,
it.
yes.
Okay. How do we address on the last page, in light of what's happened this week? I have a statement in here about the 5 lots, 2 of which were purchased by Luminata. Is that still there, or has that?
I wrote the report
Yeah, before
pri-
this, yeah.
prior to that.
Well, the town's the applicant, this has nothing to do with Illuminati. This is a
Correct.
subdivision for Riverhead Town.
Yes. Some of the information was provided to me by Mr. Eisler, and so I placed that into the report at his request. I'm sure you could remove the Illuminati issue out of it. He's not here to discuss that, so I can't really answer perhaps that part of the question.
Just down near the end of page 13. Let's see, the sentence says, "At the time, secret review will of necessity be undertaken to identify environmental impacts that were not fully addressed." The question is such as?
I'm sorry.
Such as, what environmentals have not been, or would not be?
Well, I think that part of the statement means that until a proposed use on the land can be provided, whatever it is, industrial building,
Right.
solar farm, recreational facility, whatever the uses are allowed, you would be able, the town, I guess, as the site plan reviewer, will be able to tell the developer, first, you have to show that it's consistent with the finding statement and the original supplemental EISs that were prepared. And then secondly, you can ask for additional information, even above and beyond that. And third, you could go all the way through to an independent EIS for any of those impacts that you identify.
Right.
Because I don't know where, these parcels are very large. So in one area, it may have a sensitive habitat, and in that case, it might be very disruptive. Therefore, you might trigger a takings permit from DEC. You may trigger an EIS, you may narrowly scope it in an expanded environmental assessment form narrative in order to address those particular issues. Until that's identified, it's difficult to know what's gonna happen and what the impacts are. So what we say is that you're gonna revisit secret every time an application is made post the subdivision.
Which is the law, and I think appropriately stated.
So my question would be, who would that be in front of? Who would have control after this map is, assuming it's approved? Would this board have the authority, or would it be the town board?
Well, it's similar to the question that was posed to Mr. Israel earlier, is, what do you anticipate will happen? And once we know what the application is, then it will have to be before a board. If they choose to subdivide the land, it's my belief that any subdivision of the property, it's my opinion, I should say, that any subdivision of the land would properly be before your board. That's in conflict with certain of the code provisions at the moment that would have to be addressed. Relative to site plan, that would probably be a town board decision.
So if the town sold some of these lots and another Article 10 solar came along, the town would have no say over it whatsoever.
Well, the town has
Well,
say
we
because of
would-
the zoning.
The zoning allows it, and under Article 10, there's a certain process up in Albany, which we would be designated representatives to be a part of that reviewing body, and it's like a separate agency.
And how much have we learned from the process that's ongoing now? How much say did the town actually have in that process?
Right now, the application is in its infancy, so our input has been, we've only had one decision or action to participate in it, which is a cost in terms of reviewing the application. And that's the only action that's been asked of us at this time.
Well, I'm concerned that this application is moving at lightning speed, and I don't know what the potential buyer, I know it's not in our, for our approval, but what we've learned from Article 10 on past solar, I just wouldn't be surprised if the day after they close, there was an application already in process, and there's gonna be another mega facility there without very little town input. And that's quite possible, correct?
That is a permitted use, yes, and it could go to Article 10, and if it's above 25 megawatt facility, it goes up to Public Service Commission, New York State. There is a process that does involve the town, but your local control, as we've learned from the 36 megawatt facility, is somewhat limited, and the sponsors can petition the state when they find any of the local codes or requirements to be burdensome. From what I've read, no one has quite tested yet in the courts what burdensome means, but you certainly do lose a great deal of local control, management. You can lose permit fees, site plan review fees, etc. That's what we've learned to date. Also, as we'll learn later this evening with another finding statement coming forward on the supplemental EIS on a similar solar facility. The only way to maybe control that, some recommendations were made that you could change the zoning to reduce the size of the megawatt per application. So if you were below the 25 megawatt threshold, they couldn't go to the state because your zoning would require them to stay below that threshold. Even if you had sequential applications where cumulatively they would add up to 45, 65, 100 megawatt facility, each individual would be clustered in a way that you would control your review. But that's not in the code, and who knows if
Jeff, the
That
life
would happen.
expectancy of the current solar models is about 20 years.
pardon?
The current life expectancy of the current models of solar power we have now is about 20 years.
Most are proposed to be decommissioned at 20, but there have been some that have reportedly gone for a 40-year prior to decommissioning.
Okay. I think it's probably fair to say it's gonna take way longer than 20 years to fill all the industrial space that we have at EPCAL, simply because we have Gabreski we're competing, and the market for industrial is not there yet. So it's gonna take quite a bit of time before we can fill that site. So I'm not opposed personally to solar. It's clean energy, it's renewable, and at the end of the process, you have virgin land that's can be saved or farmed or built on, whatever. I think the town would be in line to make some money, get some tax revenue. So, in my opinion, if there's some of it's gonna be solar, I'm not opposed to it. If it's allowed in the zoning, and in 20 years, when the property starts to build up, if we ever get it sold, They'll have other forms of energy ready by that time, I'm sure. That's just my thoughts on it.
I have a question for you. Has this map run before DEC? Or does it have to go to DEC?
This map does have to go to DEC because it contains wild, scenic, and recreational rivers property, and they have subdivision approval.
And have you started that?
There have been meetings with DEC, but there was no point in taking a map to them that your board wasn't aware of first. We always, the map was brought here first.
Just another question about the sewer districts. I noticed in Jeff's report that the sewer district has committed to a certain maximum flow for the sewer expansion. Okay?
The modules,
Well, in terms of, in terms of what the ultimate would be. I think it's closer to 1,400 million gallons. What I'm concerned about is suppose somebody comes in one of these lots and gobbles up all your capacity. You made any provision for that at all, or had given any thought to it?
so on the sewer district side, we're in a bit of a tough position. The flow through the plant right now is around 15,000 to 18,000 gallons per day. And it's difficult to keep the biomass alive at that level. It just is a very difficult plant to operate.
Yeah.
So the first module is 100,000 gallons, which is small enough to be a viable size, but big enough to have some room for expansion. There are 3 100,000-gallon modules that can fit within the footprint of the existing building.
Plant, yeah.
When the property was subdivided in the Berman subdivision, additional land was added to the footprint of the sewage treatment plant location to
Okay.
allow an expansion of that facility at that time. We have a $14-odd per gallon fee for denitrification on each gallon of additional capacity. And the calculation that was made there was what amount of money would you need to drive a future expansion if you received money on a as-needed basis?
Yeah.
So if our calculations are correct and somebody came along and needed 500,000 gallons, their fee plus the tax revenue from the assessed value, because it's an assessed value district, which also the other problem is, right now it has a very low assessed value, because there's not much there. So this new facility that you're speaking of would have a high assessed value, but, you know, so assuming we've done our homework correctly, that should all work out. But to project the actual construction of the million-odd gallon plant, as Ed is saying, the appetite for industrial space in eastern Suffolk County just isn't there. The absorption analysis, I think, said you could absorb about 4 to 5 acres of fully constructed industrial space per year. So, you know,
It's a long way to go.
that absorption analysis is a fascinating, document, because it tries to anticipate what is somebody willing to actually pay for to construct. And as you point out, Ed, Gabreski, I see ads in the paper all the time. Please locate your business at Gabreski. They've got the sewer, they've got the buildings. So it's a difficult push and a pull.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Any other questions, board? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, discussion item, is a minor subdivision of Henry Silverman. Is that still on hold?
Yes, this is on hold.
Okay, so we'll table that. Third discussion item is for Dune Barn. It's on here. I think so.
Did I give you copies of your in-basket for the?
Yes.
Yeah, we have those.
site. David Fadoon is with me tonight. This is his property, and he wants to erect a barn. We talked about the covenant, and the real question you had was the location, I believe, Mr. Chairman, as to where this should be sited. And Mr. Fadoon has concern as to the siting of it, and he's made up actually a map now that uses up the entire 6,000 square feet. There was a question of what's gonna happen if it's only 4,800 square feet. Nothing's gonna happen because now we're at 6,000, which is the maximum that we can go to. What he's done is he's placed the barn where, to him, it makes a lot of sense, and I'll explain to you why. If you move the barn as suggested, north and west, you run into an irrigation system. You also start using up his tillable soil. So it's a little bit more difficult for him to imagine that he should do that as opposed to placing it where he has. And where he has also allows him access from the road much easier, because if he has anything large that's coming off Riley Avenue, he has to bring it in, really straight in to the barn itself. Another thing should be pointed out to you, in that the existing barn is now in deteriorating shape. It's not good, so he really needs to have this new barn. There are fences along the borderline, the east line, on his side and also on the neighbor's side. And the neighbor's home is not opposite where the barn is, it's further north of that. So it doesn't impact him directly. For those reasons, he would really hope that you can see your way to saying this is where the barn should be, because for him, it's important that it's there.
I just want to make one point for the record. Mr. Fadoon uses 6,000 square feet in the barn. He extinguishes his right for a residence there. I just want to put that on the record.
Yes, and that's why we've done it, so there's no question.
Unless he comes back and, tears down one of the barns,
well,
in which case he would have to come back to you
Yeah.
and get permission to do that.
Well, that was the original question posed to this board, was, did the existing structures count towards that floating envelope?
And I think the answer to that was, when it was done, there was already items here that constituted nearly 6,000 square feet. So the answer was that this was a floating area that you could put a home in, that you could put a barn in, and that was what the covenant said. And we're simply saying that that's what it says. The farm committee has asked us to come here, both for the location and both as to concern that that's what the covenant says. And I think we agreed, at least Mr. Ehlers and I have agreed, that that's what the covenant means.
So what would happen to the existing barns?
You
if
could
this
take it
was
down.
built?
Well, nothing, I hope.
But you said that they were in poor condition?
Yes, they're deteriorating slowly, and, so this way, this gives me another option,
Charles, what do you know what the size of the existing building is?
It's probably a little more than 6,000 square feet.
Yes.
Yeah. It's greater than this size.
But it's not greater than 6,000, the two of them combined are 6,000.
No, I'm talking about this barn right
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Do you know how big that one is?
This barn is 6,000 square feet. This barn over here is a little greater than 6,000 square feet.
I thought I don't have the agreement in front of me, I thought it was 6,000 total combined.
No, on a floating zone of 40,000 square feet, you could have 6,000. And that included a residence and a barn and accessory building. We're not doing any of those except for the barn.
And you're allowed 2 floating zones.
No, you're allowed one floating. We only have one floating zone. We're putting it right here. It's 40,000 square feet, and that's what it says.
What's the problem with, it was suggested, putting it north of the existing barn? What's the problem with that?
I think two problems, and David can address them too. One of them is that it starts using up some of his tillable soil that he farms. And secondly, there's irrigation pipes there, and that is something
In
that...
the ground or just on it?
yes, it is irrigation motor plus underground main back there,
Thank you.
Is that where the well's located?
yeah.
So this seemed to be the opportune place, under all those circumstances, to place it. We don't think it impacts anybody in particular. And again, there are fences along that line that are both sides of the line. asking the board so we can go back to the farm committee, because we still have to go back there to get this barn.
When you say fences on both sides, the fence is just separating the houses to the east, correct? Where's the
Yes,
fence on the other,
that's
both
right,
sides?
Yeah. Well, I have a fence there, and then they have fences also, their own fences.
Well, the deer fence, it's a double fence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
How far down does your fence go?
it goes all the way down to, from Ryle Avenue to around the
Alfred?
corner to Donna Drive.
It goes all the way. It goes all the way. All right,
We're asking the board to approve that location so we can build a new barn.
any objections to?
I don't know, I think it makes sense with the irrigation and the well in the back.
Yeah, I know, it sounds like we don't have an issue, but when we do the resolution, I think we need to be clear and capture everything so that, 5 years from now, we're not in the same position.
That's fine.
And I would also ask if you could move some of the stuff you have stored along the fence over there in those people's backyards. I think you have a boat that's been sitting back there, and it's not really being a good neighbor, a boat. I don't know how that's related
You
to
can move it.
farming. So if you could do that,
That's fine, yes.
okay? All right,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
And then we'll have a resolution for the next meeting.
Okay. I like the resolution.
Okay, next item on the agenda, discussion item for 374 Main Road.
Just state your name for the record.
I'm Shannon McCaffrey from Dewey's Planning.
All right, so the planning department has received and reviewed a site plan application proposing to construct a two-story, 15,000 square foot medical office with a 7,500 square foot footprint, along with parking, landscaping, lighting, and sanitary system improvements on a vacant 3.45 acre parcel, which is located at 374 Main Road in Aquabog, on the northeast corner of State Route 25 and Union Avenue. The approval of this site plan will require a special permit from the town board pursuant to Town Code Section 301-64B1 to establish a professional office within the RLC zoning use district. The special permit application has been made and is being reviewed concurrently along with this application. Proposed action is an unlisted action pursuant to SECRA. Coordinated review is optional and recommended. Planning department staff will recommend that the planning board circulate a request to assume lead agency status for the purpose of SECRA review. Determination of significance will be withheld pending additional SECRA review based on the information detailed in this report. As I stated, the parcel is a vacant 3.45 acre parcel on the northeast corner of Main Road and Union Avenue. The site is to the north of the subject parcel. There are 3 single-family residences which are located within the agricultural protection zone. The subject parcel shares its eastern property boundary with the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses Church, and there are 2 office buildings located to the west across Union Avenue. To the south across Main Road, there is a veterinary hospital and farmland. Now, this subject parcel is identified as Lot 18 of the subdivision of Aquabog Associates Section 2, which was a 4-lot subdivision approved by the Riverhead Planning Board by resolution dated April 18th, 1989. That subdivision approval included conditions which required the filing of access easements, which limited access to State Route 25 to 2 points. The subject parcel, lot number 18, as well as the church parcel, lot number 19, were supposed to be restricted to a 50-foot wide common access easement, which is shown on page 1 of the site plan where it says right-of-way. And lots number 20 and 21, which are further to the east, were also supposed to share a separate 50-foot wide common access driveway. A cross-access easement was also filed on all 4 properties towards the northern portion of the property, which is actually shown as the 30-foot wide cross-access easement. The subdivision approval also included a requirement that the northern 55 feet of all 4 parcels would require a conservation easement to preserve it as a scenic buffer. Now, the site plan does depict the required 55-foot scenic buffer, as well as the common access driveway on Main Road and the cross-access easement, but there are issues regarding the common driveway on Main Road. So as I stated, with the common driveway, the intention was to limit access to Main Road from lots 18 and 19. When the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witness Church came in for a site plan review, the issue of the common access driveway was brought up, at which time the applicant for the church had wrote a letter to the town detailing the problems with citing the access at that common point. The applicant at that time stated that there was a large tree approximately 50 feet west of the common access point, which was over 100 years old and would pose a safety hazard for both ingress and egress on the property. The plan at that time was reviewed by the town's consulting engineer. The town's consulting engineer did note that there were safety concerns with the existing tree, as well as the topography at that location was a low point, so it would have required substantial drainage improvements within the state route right-of-way. He further noted that Lot 18, which is the one we're currently reviewing, had over 500 feet of frontage on Union Avenue, and that in the event the church's access was relocated from the common driveway, that he would recommend our subject parcel take access off of Union Avenue, a minimum distance of 150 feet from Main Road, which is what they're proposing as part of this site plan application. At that point, the town's consulting engineer had no objection to the proposed relocation of the access points, but stated that the planning board's ability to modify the access point should be verified. There was also, regarding the cross-access easement along the northern portion of all 4 parcels, it was a declaration of cross easements, which was filed with the county clerk in July of 1989, stated that it was the intention of the owners to create an easement in the nature of cross easements for purposes of access and parking to the rear of the subdivision, Section 2 of Aquabog Associates, for the mutual benefit of subsequent owners of lots 18, 19, 20, and 21. It being intended and said that initial owners, having received site plan approval from the Town of Riverhead Planning Board to provide for such access and parking. The declaration did go on to state, however, that the owners of said lots, their successors, grantees, and assigns, reserves, and grants to the Town of Riverhead, Department of Highways, or agencies having jurisdiction thereof, the right to regulate and designate the flow of traffic to, on, and off said lots herein described. It does appear that it did give the town some approval authority as to regulating where those accesses were going to be. That cross-access easement along the northern portion of the property is also problematic. As you'll see on page 4 of the staff report, when the church came in for an expansion of their parking lot and installation of solar panels, which was approved by the planning board in August of 2009, those solar panels were actually located within that cross-access easement area. When I looked at the planning board resolution from 2009, it did not include any mention of this cross-access area or indicate that it was even contemplated. It is noted, however, that title reports were not required as part of a site plan submission until 2013, so this may explain why that issue of cross-access was never brought up and those panels were allowed to be installed in that area.
So how did you know about it for this application?
Well, I went out, I saw the 30-foot wide cross-access easement. It was detailed in the title report that was submitted with this application. And it just led me to go back and research some of the old approvals and look at the subdivision approval. In terms of traffic from the site, due to the potential for a significant increase in trip generation from the construction of a 15,000 square foot medical office, staff recommends the preparation of a traffic impact study. The TIS should analyze current traffic levels at the intersection of Main Road and Union Avenue, as well as the potential traffic at the intersection generated from once the site is constructed and operational. Additional recommendations on potential traffic mitigation measures are withheld pending receipt and review of a TIS. With regards to the vegetative buffers, the site plan does propose to keep significant buffer areas of existing vegetation along the frontage with Main Road, along the parcel to the east, as well as the neighboring parcels to the north. As I stated, the 55-foot wide scenic buffer is shown on the property, and it's going to be a non-disturbance area. While these buffer areas are substantial, along Main Road, there's a minimum of 50 foot of retained vegetation, aside from a small 15-foot wide area of clearing that'll be used to bring utilities to the site. There's a 30-foot retained buffer along the eastern property boundary and 55 feet along the northern property line. As detailed you'll see in page 5 and 6 of the staff report, a lot of the vegetation on site is deciduous vegetation and low-value scrub brush. I would recommend that the areas that are shown to be retained as scenic buffers be flagged and staked with a highly visible tape so that we can go out and accurately assess what those buffers will look like. At that point, we can identify the needs for any supplemental plantings for increased screening. The site plan does indicate a row of 6 existing trees along the property frontage, which are identified to remain. These trees should be flagged in the field and identified on the plan by their caliper. The plan does indicate a sidewalk easement on the northeast corner of Main Road and Union Avenue. Meets and bounds description of this area should be provided, as well as consideration for a dedication of this area to either the New York State Department of Transportation or the town of Riverhead, so that public improvements, including the sidewalk, as well as an existing public fire hydrant, are not installed on private property. Now, there are a number of town code guidelines that dictate potential design standards that could be used to dictate development on this site. Now, if you recall this application, we did have the applicant come in and prepare some rough 2 sketch plans. One of the design guidelines states that on parcels of more than 3 acres, the buildings shall be developed in a campus style with no building having a size of more than 5,000 square feet. When it came before the planning board, we had them do a sketch of the campus style layout versus the single building footprint. At that time, the planning board agreed on the single building layout as it was able to reduce the impervious surface coverage, it was able to keep more of the existing vegetation, and it was able to keep those buildings much, much farther away from the residences to the north. With regards to the lighting, they are proposing a number of parking lot pole-mounted lighting fixtures as well as wall sconces along the building. All fixtures comply with the height requirements. However, it was noted that I looked at the manufacturer's schedule for the lighting fixture, and it doesn't look like it was available in the 3,000 degree color temperature. That's a simple revision. They'll just need to pick fixtures that can comply with the color temperature of the town code. The application does propose to cover 28 of the 102 required parking stalls with a material called grass pave, which is purportedly a pervious load-bearing surface. The material consists of a system of plastic rings arranged in a grid system, which is then filled with concrete sand and topped with either sod or seed. I did clip something from the internet on page 9 just to show you a cross-section of the detail of what this material looks like. It's unclear if the grass pave is being considered pervious or impervious in their calculations. That's something that's going to need to be provided. They will require a variance for impervious coverage, so we would like to just get that brought up. And now, being that the site of, the proposed use of the site is medical office, staff doesn't recommend the grass paved material, just because, people using the site may not feel comfortable walking on a grass material. I just wanted to see if the board was in agreement with that. Being that they are going to require a variance for impervious surface coverage, would you rather see asphalt or the grass paved material?
Is it ADA compliant?
I do not know that. I can check that. We're not opposed to either way, grass pave or asphalt, so it's really whatever the board would like.
If you go to asphalt, then you're gonna have hard drainage structures too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing something other than paving, so if you could look into that,
If it's ADA, okay.
if it's ADA compliant,
You would like it.
please. Greg, this concrete pad, is that where the dumpster crowd's gonna be? Because I don't see it located on here.
You meaning the concrete pad
Yeah.
in the, Yes, that is where the dumpster is gonna be, and there are details of the dumpster enclosure, I believe, further on page 4 of the site plan. The site plan does propose new sidewalks along the frontages with Main Road and Union Avenue, as well as a walkway to the building from Union Avenue. Staff recommends that a walkway should be provided from Main Road as well. And it's noted that there are walkways provided for the handicap accessible stalls closest to the building, but staff would recommend that the entirety of the site should be serviced by walkways so that people aren't walking through the parking lot. And there was an existing concrete pad with telephone equipment near the northwest corner of the parcel. It's not indicated whether that's going to stay or be removed. That's something that just needs clarification. Now, they did provide elevations for the buildings. I provided them to you in your packets. One of the comments in terms of the design of the building for the design guidelines in the town code states that non-agricultural buildings should echo the character of the district's residences or farmhouses in terms of shape, line, and massing. The exteriors of buildings shall utilize natural cladding materials such as wood, brick, stucco, stone, or a combination. The use of synthetic, metallic, and reflective materials should be avoided. On the elevations, it is noted that they are proposing to use vinyl siding. I would recommend that the applicant, reconsider that siding, as it specifically excludes the synthetic material. It isn't located in the rural corridor zoning district, so I mean, they could use shiplap, cedar shakes, something to make it more in character and in harmony with the surrounding area.
A quick question.
Yes, sir.
Figure 4, your figure 4. It looks like there's some sort of a structure there. In fact, it looks like it might even be an electrical.
You said that was a telephone pad?
Yeah, that's the concrete pad in the northwest corner of the property.
That's in use? Or is it abandoned?
It looks like abandoned. I mean, there's no building on the property there. When I did a site visit, there looked like there was some remnants of some sort of foundation, but I didn't see any building permit records or anything to indicate what that was, so I would believe that
So
it's
it'll probably be
abandoned.
removed.
I would think so. It's just, that's something that we would like the applicant to clarify.
We believe it's from Verizon, and it was built on the property without permission. They're not opposed, they will get rid of it, or they'll keep it. It doesn't matter to them.
And I think we should remove it then.
You want it removed?
Is the intent at all to utilize the basement for expansion later on? I mean, I know you covered it here in line 3 of the building department comment here about removing the bathrooms and the elevator and whatever, but is there intent, can you use that? Is there intent to, if need be, expand into the basement?
I don't believe so, but I can go back to my client to confirm that.
I mean, they would be, if they were to use those areas right now, it just indicates it as storage. If at some point they were to come in to try to convert it into office, that would affect floor area ratios, they would be required to park it. And I mean, they are already exceeding the impervious coverage. I don't see where they'd be able to put much more parking in it, so it does seem unlikely that would happen, but.
Are all those islands gonna be irrigated?
I do not know. I would think so, probably.
Okay, 'cause I mean, like, the entranceway, it's a little if it's not irrigated, it's not gonna last.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be opposed to alternative, either stones or something in the islands. If you come up with something imaginative, that'd be great.
Okay.
We have brought that up, I believe it was called xeriscaping, something that doesn't, require water-intensive use. As we've done with other applications, I mean, we would like to see it irrigated via an irrigation well as opposed to using municipal water, just to help reduce the load on the Riverhead Water District.
They're gonna use the grass pave, and they're gonna have to water it, maintain it, correct? The grass is gonna grow.
Well, did the board want to see the grass pave, or would they prefer asphalt? I mean,
No,
if they can manage their stormwater.
I'm just asking that as a general question.
I think grass paved certainly looks nicer than asphalt.
Think you're gonna look into that? and
The
get back to me,
ADA
please?
compliance.
There were some engineering comments. They will be required to get a SWIP approved. The town engineer did have comments regarding the detail of the grass pave as well as its calculation in terms of impervious coverage. And noted earthwork calculations must be provided. The plan did go to the Architectural Review Board. The Architectural Review Board had some comments. The elevation drawings that you have were produced after in response to some of the ARB comments. So the ARB has not seen these current drawings, so they will go back there and they will get another shot to weigh in on it.
The comments are good, as far as this goes, you know.
Yeah.
You're looking forward to the next, when are they meeting again?
I believe they meet the fourth Wednesday of every month. Right.
You're right on target.
All right. There is a 12-inch water main running along Main Road as well as down Union Avenue, and the parcel is located wholly within Riverhead Water District Extension number 34. In an email dated October 31st, 2018, the Riverhead Water District had the comments that the plans show a new water service but does not specify the size. It's too early to comment on the project, but the usual procedure will apply: application fees, RPZ application, and key money fees. The application was referred to the Suffolk County Planning Commission, and in a letter dated October 29th, 2018, they considered it a matter for local determination. The plan has been referred to the DOT. We have not received comments back from them yet, and I'm still awaiting fire marshal review comments.
So that buffer, Greg, and then the cross access, and the shared access, which I guess was pushed aside because of that historic tree.
Tree, yes.
So, did the state comment on that, now that we've deviated from those original approved plans?
I did speak about this with Mr. Ehlers. In terms of the access off on Main Road, I think we would likely condition any approvals on this on them eliminating any rights to access off of Main Road. In terms of DOT comments specific to this application, we haven't received them yet. It's too early for me to be able to comment on what they would have to say about it, but, the access to the church is now to the east. They would eliminate any rights to have access off of Main Road and just take it off of Union, so.
So the solar panels that they installed, that, you said that's right in the 30-foot cross access, right?
It appears to be. I mean, I didn't, the site plan for the church did not show the cross-access easement, but to the best of my knowledge and the best of my gauging abilities, it did look like they were installed in that easement.
And that was done with town approval?
Yes. And again, it's one of these things now, title reports were not required. We didn't pick up on it. Unfortunately, we kind of missed the ball on that one, but we have identified them now. We do require title reports, and that's how we're identifying these issues.
So much for good planning. And at what point will the water district say that they could serve this proposed building and property? I mean, a lot of time we get these generic responses, but can they serve them? Are we approving something that they can't supply water to?
The applicant will need to provide details as to the size of the service and the proposed use. Once they provide that, I believe the water district would be in a better position to comment on whether they can serve the parcel or not.
Also, where they're gonna locate the backflow.
Yes. Well, you mean for the just earthwork calculations on what they're taking out?
No, backflow for the water service.
Oh, for the RPZ, yeah.
Okay, so, bunch of questions still on the table, right?
Yeah, and again, I believe you're gonna have the applicant before the town board to review the special permit application next week. I will likely have a resolution to coordinate lead agency status at our next planning board meeting, so we can send out that letter to all involved agencies and start the secret process.
This is going to be an interesting question because it is a special permit before the town board and also with you as the planning board. So one of you is going to have to be lead agency, and seen.
Okay, so I think on the last point.
Regarding the SWIP, do you guys want that submitted now or later on?
You don't need that until before final approval.
One last
That's after
point,
preliminary
yes, I
approval.
think it's important what Member O'Day said about the elevations and making it aesthetically pretty.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, you can work on that.
That's gonna be all fleshed out through the secret process, and one of the criteria for special permits is consistency with community character, so I'm sure the town board may weigh in on that issue as well.
Well, the back of the building is facing Main Road, so you
Right.
really have to do something nice there.
Two fronts, basically.
Well, the second plan looks pretty good.
Thank you for your time.
The next item is 609 Northville Turnpike LLC. Two-lot minor subdivision.
If you could just state your names for the record.
Adrian Cognero?
All right, so the planning department has received and reviewed a minor two-lot subdivision application seeking approval to subdivide an existing 0.5 acre lot and create two separate building lots. We've received a minor subdivision sketch plan prepared and stamped by Nathan Taft Corwin, land surveyor, last dated December 19th, 2019. Subject parcel is located at 609 Northville Turnpike in Riverhead. It's located on the eastern side of Northville Turnpike, approximately 200 feet north of the intersection of Northville Turnpike and Elton Street. Subject parcel is located within the Residence A40 zoning use district and is located in a predominantly residential area. Subject parcel is surrounded on all sides by single-family residences, and there is a commercial daycare center located approximately 200 feet away at the northwest corner of Northville Turnpike and Elton Street. The site is presently improved with a one-story, single-story frame residence, which is approximately 1,400 square feet in size, and is situated on the eastern side of the property. The western side of the parcel is currently vacant. If you see figure 2, I took a street-level view of it just so you can visualize what's going on the parcel. The existing structure currently has several open permits for interior renovations and electrical work. As of the publication date of this report, none of those permits have been closed out or issued certificates of occupancy. In recent years, the house appears to have been vacant, and there are a number of code violations which were issued to the property owner beginning in 2017, relating to property maintenance, overgrown grass, weeds, trees, etc. According to a search of town records, all of the violations have been addressed as of January 6, 2019. The proposed minor subdivision application is a type 2 action pursuant to SECRA with no further environmental review required. If approved by the planning board, this subdivision application would result in the creation of two substandard size lots within the RA40 zoning district, with the proposed lot sizes being 13,499 square feet for parcel 1 and 8,512 square feet for parcel 2, where a minimum lot size of 40,000 square feet is required. It also appears as though approval of the subdivision would result in substandard combined yard setbacks. And it's also recommended that the applicant identify a realistic building envelope, as the building envelope that's created by the required setbacks seems unrealistic for proposed parcel 1. The applicant's design professional must prepare a survey showing the proposed building envelopes, as this information will be required for a zoning board of appeals application. And relief for required road frontage will also be required, as both lots are proposing to have 77.5 feet of frontage where 150 feet is required. Any approvals, any relief required from the ZBA must be received prior to the planning board approving this subdivision. In terms of conformity with the surrounding area, although the proposed minor subdivision would result in the creation of substandard lot sizes for RA40, I did an analysis of the surrounding area. I looked at the east side of Northville Turnpike, I analyzed 6 properties in close proximity and found that the average parcel size was 0.18 acres. And on the west side of Northville Turnpike, I looked at 7 properties. It was a little bit larger at 0.32 acres, but they're still both significantly undersized for the RA40 zoning district. The subject parcel is located within Riverhead Water District Extension Number 2, and there's an 8-inch water main located within Northville Turnpike, which appears as though it could serve the newly created residents. The subdivision plan was referred to the Riverhead Water District. I have not received comments from them yet. And the subject parcel is located entirely within the Riverhead Sewer District. There are 2 8-inch sewer mains which run along both sides of Northville Turnpike, which appears as though they could serve the proposed subdivision. Any approvals granted by the planning board should include a condition that any new residential development must connect to the Riverhead Sewer District. That's likely would be a requirement from the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, but it couldn't hurt for us to capture it in any approval resolution. I did note that there is an encroaching driveway. Parcel 2, which is the smaller parcel on the eastern side, the one currently developed with the house. It appears as though the overgrown asphalt driveway would encroach onto the neighboring parcel. If the subdivision is approved, prior to the signature of the map, staff recommends that this section of encroaching driveway should be removed so that there's no encroachment onto the new neighboring lot. Pursuant to the town code, the creation of new buildable lots requires the developer to make a payment of a $3,000 fee to the town of Riverhead per lot in the subdivision if they are not providing recreational facilities to serve the proposed subdivision. Based on the fact that the lot is presently improved with a single-family residence and the subdivision would only be creating 1 new buildable lot, the required fee would be $3,000, which should be paid prior to the signature of any subdivision maps. Access to the site would be provided via a curb cut on Northville Turnpike. The curb cut and any work within the county right-of-way would require a permit from the Suffolk County DPW. And with regards to groundwater management zone, it's located in groundwater management zone 4, which permits 600 gallons per day per acre of sanitary flow. But because it's being served by the sewer district, it doesn't seem as though that'll be an issue. A title report has been submitted and is being reviewed by the town attorney's office. I have not gotten comments back from them yet. I expect them shortly, and we will address any issues with the title report prior to any subdivision approvals. And I did refer the application to the Suffolk County Department of Public Works. Although their approval is not required for subdivisions, they did have comments in a letter that I got last week that the map just needs to show residential curb cuts and aprons for the 2 lots. I referred to the Suffolk County Planning Commission. I have not gotten a letter back yet from them. If approved, it will require the map to be filed with Suffolk County Real Property Tax Services as well as the county clerk.
Is your intention to live in the house or to knock it down and put another one up?
No, the one was already renovated, the one.
You want to renovate?
Do you live there?
No,
You own it?
yes,
You own it. You own it. And you're gonna build a house next door?
yes.
Yeah, you have to go to the ZBA next, right?
Yep.
Pretty
Yeah,
straightforward.
the chief building inspector, once we receive the revised plans that show the building envelopes, instead of making 3 separate zoning board applications, we want to capture everything in one. I mean, you'll be able to, you'll have to show a realistic building envelope, you know. The way your subdivision plan was shown, you basically had a 20-foot wide building envelope, which doesn't seem realistic, so you'll have to make an application to the ZBA showing, you know, what you're proposing. The ZBA will weigh in on it, and you'll have to go through that process. That process will need to be done before we can move forward with public hearings or planning board approvals, but as I said, the chief building inspector will issue that denial letter and get them going to the zoning board once we receive the revised plans.
Greg, was there ever a house on that parcel 1?
No,
I didn't see.
I mean, I don't ever remember seeing one there, and I've been here a long time, but
it was
just the
all
way-
overgrown when we bought it.
I'm just surprised at the way that driveway is
Yeah.
laid out.
Yeah, when I looked at town records, I didn't see anything on that parcel. I mean, It's possible, these were portions of old filed maps. There may have been something there years, prior to zoning, but nothing that I could readily find any records on.
In that area, small,
Yeah.
little small lots.
All right. Good. Good. We're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, item 6, supplemental finding statement for S-Power.
Jeff, you're up, Jeff.
So, this is a supplemental finding statement, which is required under SEQA in order to complete and state what the findings were as a result of a supplemental final environmental impact statement, which was the result of a second positive deck on this application in order to address several issues that had been inadequately addressed in the applicant's final EIS. Specifically, that dealt with additional solar facilities within the region of Calverton. And the second issue was cumulative impact analyses. While the applicant did look at a very generic potential for additional solar facilities, they did not identify this particular 36 megawatt facility, which is proposed to be constructed adjacent and substantially contiguous to the 20 megawatt facility, which was the subject of the original EIS that this board had requested. Third, that resulted in an interpretation under SEQA of a segmented review, because they had both a common sponsor and the projects were contiguous to each other and very similar. So this finding statement is used as a corrective action in order to clean up any of the flaws that were the result of the original EIS and the finding statement that was issued for the 20 megawatt facility, which now we can include at least by mention and partial review and identification of comments on 36 and combine those two. Had we had all that information in the very beginning, perhaps during the site plan review and some of the covenants and restrictions that were placed on the 20 megawatt facility, and particularly the Gentie line, which connects it to the substation on Edwards Avenue, perhaps some other decisions or mitigating measures would have been performed at that time. However, the project has been under construction, and so it's near impossible to reverse what has already occurred, other than to correct the SEQA record. Any comments or questions?
So did we find anything else out about the substation on the east side of Edwards Avenue, about the expansion? I know we had some questions that were going back and forth.
So it has been my interpretation from tracking what has been happening in East Hampton, that there is a substation in Montauk that LIPA is trying to relocate rather than expand. First they tried to expand it. They felt it would be unsuccessful because it's subject to flooding. The main question, Mr. Chairman, I think you had was whether or not a substation expansion or relocation is subject to local site plan review. According to East Hampton, it is, because this project is under East Hampton's town review. I don't know if that's particular to their code, but I don't think that an expansion within this site, because you're adjacent to a town road, Edwards Avenue, I think it does fall under your jurisdiction. I think Mr. Ayers and Mr. Murphy had been doing their own research on that.
What if an Article 10 was tied to it?
That's a good question. You mean if, as a result of a major utility facility
An
being
additional one.
constructed and one needed to be expanded? I've thought about that as well. The way I see the substation and how it functions with regard to the solar facilities, if you think that the solar facility is generating the electricity and the gen-tie line is the extension cord, it has to plug into a receptacle in order to release that energy to the power grid. So if the substation at Edwards Avenue is only got a receptacle that could receive 1 or 2 facilities, if they expanded that to 6 or 8 or 10, how many more cords could be plugged in? And I think in the analysis through the supplemental EIS, we found that it's the substation that's the magnet and its location. Because you not only need the land for some of these facilities in order to construct the solar generating facility, but you need access to the grid. And the distance that needs to be traveled to connect that extension cord is very costly. So the shorter that distance, the better it is for the construction financing behind these projects. So it could be expanded. And if it went under Article 10, I'm not sure how.
Unless they had to cross Edwards Avenue again, right?
Well, everyone has to cross Edwards Avenue to get to it unless you build on the east side. And then that does fall under the town's jurisdiction, but it seems to be maybe more of a minor aspect than the overall projects. And I'm not against, renewable energy. It was more my position earlier during the discussion. It's relinquishing the immediate control of land use, from the local municipality that I find somewhat troublesome with Article 10, especially with secret.
Okay, so for this particular supplemental finding statement, what would be next after this? It has to be posted on the environmental bulletin?
Yeah, this will be circulated to all the involved agencies. I've also included, during my review, I looked at the 36 megawatt facilities comments that were received from New York Ag and Markets, from PSC itself, and from Pine Barrens Commission. I incorporated that into the supplemental EIS, and I've added them to the list of involved agencies so that they're aware that we took a second look at this. They did comment on the 36 megawatt facility, questioning whether or not the board had looked at the 36 along with the 20 megawatt facility. So they also raised an eyebrow about that issue. So I want to make sure that they are circulated on the finding statement.
So did Ag and Markets take a position or offer an opinion on farmable soils after 20 years?
Yes. Yes, Ag and Markets feel their comments were, I think I stated them in the EIS verbatim, that they consider that a loss of agricultural production because of the 20-year cycle. They don't look at those soils necessarily as not being recoverable, but they feel as far as agricultural use, that 20 years is well beyond, including that in their projections.
So once these farms go to solar, that's it?
As far as Ag and Markets are concerned, they're no longer agricultural products.
Because we were advised otherwise when all these applications were coming across.
Well, I think, depending upon the zoning or whatever future use could be applied, the soils are certainly, they're not removed, and they are there. I'm sure they're possibly disturbed during construction, but I can give you those verbatim comments from Ag and Markets. They consider it no longer agricultural use.
It's also, it's always said they could be put back in use, agriculture, that's all. Day one, they said that.
Right. Okay.
So after the finding statement is adopted, there is a 10-day period where other involved agencies don't necessarily comment on it, but they're made aware of it. You might receive a letter or something from someone. I'm not sure. And then SECR is complete.
Okay, nice job, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, before we take up the resolutions, are there any public comments on the resolutions? Public comment on resolutions?
I live in Jamesport, and I'm speaking this evening as an individual member of our community. First, let me say that I really have the deepest respect for each and every one of you and for this process, and I know that you take your responsibilities very seriously. With regard to Planning Board Resolution 2019-206, which accepts and adopts a consistency analysis dated April 1st and adopts your findings on a proposed preliminary 8-lot subdivision at EPCAL, I do appreciate this opportunity to ask a few questions and offer some comments, but unfortunately, having just received the comprehensive resolution this evening, it really does put everyone at a bit of a disadvantage. And more specifically, the consistency analysis, which you're also accepting and adopting as part of this resolution, isn't available at all. I was following Mr. Baer's comments, and I think he got up to page 13 of that document. It would really be very important and helpful if the public also was afforded that same opportunity to ask some questions, make some comments, and review it as you have. I'm not taking any position for or against the merits of the EPCAL sale, please understand that. I'm not taking a position on any of the players or the substance or perhaps lack thereof of the contract. I'm merely expressing my concern that you would consider voting on this particular resolution, or for that matter, any resolution, without ample time for review of the entire resolution and afford the public adequate disclosure. I urge you to table this resolution for 2 weeks, and in the interim, if possible, put the consistency analysis as well as the finding statement, and maybe even the map. You refer to the map. There's a 50-lot subdivision map, which I could review online, but not the 8-lot map. This would afford the public an opportunity to examine and review what you're adopting and to ask questions as appropriate. I just ask you to please discharge your responsibility of full disclosure to the public and consider tabling the resolution. I thank you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Phil Barbado, Jamesport. I'd like to submit for your consideration the idea that we can't really piggyback on the previously approved seeker determination for this area. I'm speaking on the same one, number 26. And the reason for that is a couple. First of all, there have been changes since that last seeker determination was made. The contract requires the new owner to build 1 million square feet of industrial space within a limited amount of time. That's new. Second of all, The last map was reviewed by the DEC, and it's been called the red line. They've indicated on that map, the previous subdivision map, what cannot be developed by virtue of wetlands and other protected areas. So those two big things have changed since the last time there was a secret determination on this. So I submit to you that you need to make another secret determination. This is a new action by this board, not an extension of an old one. And I think if you took a look at it, this is really a type 1 action, for a couple of reasons. The state law, which is section 617.4B4, references the acquisition, sale, lease, annexation, or other transfer of 100 or more contiguous acres of land by a state or local agency. That's this. Our own town law, section 61-14, section A22, lists any facility, development, or project which is to be directly located in one of the following critical areas. And these include freshwater wetlands, wild scenic and recreational river areas. That's another reason why it's type 1. And then also in 61-14, section B, it's referred to any funding, licensing, or planning activities in respect to any of the types of actions listed above, meaning one of the ones I just read. So this is a planning activity related to a type 1 action, which also makes it a type 1 action. So not only should you be making your own determination on this particular new action, but I think that you should call it a type 1 action as well. And once it's a type 1 action, you need to get into a coordinated review with the other agencies that are involved and have a legal responsibility for what happens on that site, like the DEC, like the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, and probably the Pine Barrens Commission. You need to coordinate with them, decide who the lead agency is, get an environmental assessment report done, and the rest you know. I also believe that besides the coordinated review, any map that comes out of this process, whether you call it a type 1 action or not, any map that comes out of this process has to include those areas designated by the DEC that cannot be developed. Nothing else makes sense. We gave away 1,000 acres on the assumption that you can't develop on it and that they're worthless and they were gonna cost the town $100,000 a year to keep as habitat. Are we gonna let somebody else develop it now? We should designate those areas clearly as, sorry, can't develop it. And that way the map is definitely clear to any future owner that that's what they can be used for. And I think that's particularly important when you talk about, it's been mentioned earlier today that the purchaser has already indicated they may want to transfer yield from one parcel to another. Well, what if that parcel is undevelopable because it's previously been designated by DEC as can't be built on? What yield are you going to be transferring from that? Are they going to base it, if there's no map that shows that, are they going to base it on PC zoning? So I think it's vital that the town indicate on whatever approved map comes out of this process, what areas can be developed and therefore are zoned accordingly, and what areas cannot be developed according to previously, I think it's a map that came out in 2012. Designated by the DEC upon their review of the 50-lot subdivision. And I think that's all. I appreciate your honest sincerity and your hard work on this, and I look forward to you considering these points. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm John McAuliffe. I live in the Rolling Woods area of Riverhead. I want to follow up a bit on what was just said and also ask a couple of questions that frankly are very puzzling to me. One starts with where and the reason for going from the 50 lots to the 8 lots, what the agenda or goal was for doing that, and I don't know if that affects your decision-making process, but I think the comment that was made at the beginning of this session about the rush to action on this was well taken. There is, in the Riverhead Local, there was an article in March which noted the decision 2 years ago to pursue a sale of nearly all the town's remaining vacant acreage to Illuminati Aerospace for the same price was defended by former Supervisor Sean Walter with the argument that state environmental regulations would not allow for the development of more than 600. To support his contention, Walter produced a copy of the subdivision map prepared by the town's engineering consultants that DEC staff had redlined in 2012 to indicate areas they considered developable. Conveying the undevelopable acreage to the buyer would relieve the town of responsibility for the remaining vacant land, Walter said at the time. He said the cost of mowing the grass on the vacant land would be as much as $100,000 a year, basically the same point that has been made. It's interesting, even in the editorial in today's News Review, they still are assuming that there is a distinction between the 600 and the 1,600 acres. And as the previous speaker said, I think the ensuring in your process that that distinction is made may be what we depend upon to preserve those 1,000 acres as they should be preserved. The final question I wanted to raise, because I've sat in on various town board discussions, is this regulation, law, resolution that was adopted which specified that trees over a certain size could not be cut down for solar. It was not clear to me then, and maybe you know now, whether that language also applied to the land you're talking about now. If not, I think that ought to be established clearly. It was commented upon, Mr. Densiewski commented favorably upon the fact that a large solar array might be put in because it was 20 years and the land could then be used for another purpose. In that case, I think the question is, why does the town need an intermediary earning the profit from that rental rather than the town directly being paid for it and controlling the actual land use? Any rate, the pluses or minuses of going solar is one question, but if you're going solar, does this restriction on tree cutting apply to the EPCAL land? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public on the resolutions? Okay, we'll take up the resolutions.
I'll move resolution number 2019-24, which is a recommendation to remove a 24-foot wide easement for interior road construction on a site in Wading River.
Second. Okay, motion made and seconded to approve resolution 24, Wading River cross access, abandon and approve cross access easement. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Resolution's approved. 25.
Make a motion to move resolution number 25 for S-Power, which is to adopt a supplemental finding and the finding statement. So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to approve resolution 25 for S-Power, adopting a supplemental finding statement. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is approved.
I'd like to motion to table the resolution number 4 as a request of Mrs. Blas, Enterprise Park at Calverton, to try and resolve and clear up some of the cloudinesses involved in this parcel on almost daily basis.
I agree with Dick. I think the speakers made a lot of sense. Although I don't think we're fast-tracking it. The board has spent a lot of time on it, and it's been 20-something years. But I think the speakers made some good points that the public hasn't had a chance to have information that maybe we have. So I would second Mr. O'Day's motion.
Okay, so just to clarify, Dick, you said resolution 4, it's actually 26, right?
Yeah.
It's listed as 4 on the agenda, but it's resolution 26. So,
Okay.
just to add to that, I don't know what word to use, surprised, disturbed, that the public didn't have a chance to review the consistency analysis or the map. I don't think that's how we operate, so I would agree that we need to table this for at least 2 weeks. So we have a motion and a second to table resolution 26. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Resolution 26 is tabled.
Make a motion to move resolution number 27, the LS Family LP Riverhead Ford parking lot, granting approval, site plan application. So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve resolution 27, Riverhead Ford parking lot, final approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is approved.
I'll move resolution 28 for the preliminary major residential subdivision of Paulfold Farm to grant a 60-day extension of the action deadline. So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to approve resolution 28, an extension for Cowfold Farms. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is approved. Any public comments on anything in front of the planning board? Any item?
Mr. Chairman, I do have, staff does have, one item to bring to your attention this evening. In your packet is included a draft RFP, or request for proposal. The town board would like to implement and begin the process for updating the comprehensive plan. It was last adopted in 2003, so it's timely that we go back and revisit it. Supervisors from town board would like to have the planning board's input as to what should be analyzed and included in the study of the updated comprehensive plan. I left there kind of a template in terms of things that could be addressed or should be addressed in a memo to you. So at the next meeting, I'd like to have that added as a discussion item. And between now and then, if you could think about things you'd like to see addressed, and then we can.
Hey, Jeff, are you trying to say that it was all wrong back then? Sorry, Barbara, I had to do that.
But it's funny, I did speak with John Shapiro. Remember John Shapiro?
Yeah.
I spoke with him a few weeks ago. He's kind of the guru of planners on Long Island, wonderful man. Just to hear what his thoughts were back then, and his projections for Riverhead, and how some things have come true, how some things have not come to full fruition. So between now and next week, next meeting, if you could think about that, and then we'll prepare a resolution to the town board, what we'd like to see included.
Okay,
That's it?
thank you. Anyone else from the public on any matter in front of the planning board? Okay, minutes.
I'd like to move the planning board minutes of March 21st, 2019. So moved.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of March 21st, 2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting. So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Somebody